call the meeting to order. I have 7 p.m. on my official meeting time telephone. So I'm calling the special town meeting for the town of Wareham, July 24th, 2023, to order at 7 p.m. We have a 0 quorum requirement, and I know the presence of more than 0 voters, so we are good to go. The town meeting warrant, having been duly posted and served, is in order, so we can proceed. But before we do, did either the chair of the select board or the chair of the FinCom wish to make any opening statement? I think they're declining. And so to start the meeting, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're having some logistics up here. So I understand the chair of the select board and the chair of the finance committee do not wish to make opening statements, so we will proceed to the warrant. Is there a motion? I believe we have a motion for a consent agenda. I recognize the chair of the finance committee.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town pass over Article Number 2, rescind Article 15, 2022.
Yeah, I think your mic may not be live.
I move that the town pass over Article Number 2, rescind Article 15, 2022 Spring Town Meeting. Pass over Article 3, engineering plans for the sewer line to Ruggles Pump Station. And pass over Article Number 4, transfer of retained earnings.
Is there a second on the motion on the consent agenda? Motions made and seconded on the consent agenda. For those of you who have not been here when we've had a consent agenda, basically what this says is that these particular articles, 2, 3, and 4, will be passed over without any discussion. The articles that are proposed to be passed over, Article Number 2 is to rescind Article 15 of the 2022 Spring Town Meeting, and as I think you'll see a little further on in the meeting, that issue is covered by Article 5 of this warrant. Article Number 3, engineering plans for speech, sewer lines into Ruggles Pump Station. Again, that's the same issue. Article Number 4, transfer of retained earnings. I'm informed that because we're past the end of the fiscal year, with this meeting the fiscal year 2023, that we cannot take up that item. It will have to be taken up at the fall town meeting. So I'm going to go through each article. If there's anyone that thinks that we should have a discussion on those items and not vote to just pass them over and get to the heart of the matter, which I think we're all here for, please signify by saying hold. Article Number 2. Article Number 3. Article Number 4. Hearing no one stating hold, I'll have a vote on the consent agenda motion to pass over Articles 2, 3, and 4. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by stating nay. It's passed unanimously. passed by a majority voice vote. I've had presented to me a certification to the moderator by the select board. This is under the town of Wareham bylaws. The motion, which has been passed by the select board 5-0, states, I move that the board vote pursuant to bylaws Division 1, Article 1, Section 2, to certify that Article 5, amend Article 15 from the 2022 spring town meeting, should be taken up immediately prior to Article 1. And the explanation is that Article 5, which amends Article 15 from the 2022 spring town meeting, may have important fiscal consequences and should be heard first. So based on this certification under the bylaws, we'll now move to Article 5. Is there a motion on Article 5? Yes, please.
I move that the town amend Article 15 from the 2022 annual spring meeting by deleting to abandon the failed gravity system, replacing it with a closed system with grinder pumps, and inserting to repair and or reline the sewer lines and related structural equipment, so that the approved article would now read, I move that the town appropriates the sum of $3 million to pay costs of a capital improvement project to repair and or reline the sewer lines and related structural equipment to Wankiko Avenue, Murphy Street, Columbia Street, Barnes Street, Pleasant Street, and Bayview Avenue, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7(1), Section 8(14), or pursuant to any other enabling authority. All or any portion of the borrowing authorized by this vote may be obtained through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust established pursuant to General Law, Chapter 29C.
Motion's been made and second on Article 5 as it appears up on the screen. May I have the vote and recommendation of the select board?
It's going to be 401.
401 to recommend passage.
Yes.
May I have the vote and the recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action 8-0-0. And the recommendation is that these repairs are necessary and can be done without the need for the grinder pumps. And Article 5 provides an efficient and cost-effective way to address the need to dig trenches for the failed gravity line repairs without the need for funds beyond those already appropriated and should be approved.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 5? Oh. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. May I have the vote and recommendation of the sewer commissioners?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sewer Commission recommends approval of this article 410.
And may I have the vote and recommendation of the Capital Planning Committee?
Capital Planning Committee recommends favorable action 6-0-0.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 5? Seeing no one standing to be recognized to be heard, we will go to a vote. This is a borrowing article, and so it requires a 2/3 vote in order to pass. All those in favor of the motion under Article 5, as it has been read and as it appears on the screen, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by stating nay. I declare 2/3 a voice vote majority. Article 1. Is there a motion on Article 1?
I move that $36 million is appropriated for the purpose of financing the construction of the WPCF clarifier upgrade and headworks projects, including without limitation all costs thereof as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of the General Laws. that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow $36 million and issue bonds or notes therefore under Chapter 44 of the general laws and/or Chapter 29C of the general laws. That such bonds or notes shall be general obligations of the town unless the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, determines that they should be issued as limited obligations and may be secured by local system revenues as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C. That the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow all or a portion of such amount from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust established pursuant to Chapter 29C, and in connection therewith to enter into a financing agreement and/or security agreement with the trust, and otherwise to contract with the trust and the Department of Environmental Protection with respect to such loan and for any federal or state aid available for the project or for the financing thereof. That the select board or their designee is authorized to enter into a project regulatory agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection to expend all funds available for the project and to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out the project.
Motion's been made and seconded on Article 1. May I have the vote and the recommendation of the Select Board?
The select board voted 0-4-1 against.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action 6-1-0. It is our conclusion that this project is essential to maintain the sewer system's reliability. And while this article does not address many of the complex issues the Sewer Commission needs to tackle going forward, it is intended to prevent a system failure as the equipment exceeds its useful life, and it should be approved. And I would add that what we are very concerned about is a catastrophic environmental problem that could result in major costs to the town and penalties and possible takeover by the state. We are also concerned that if we do not approve this tonight, as I think you'll hear in a presentation shortly, we will be foregoing $3.6 million in free money that would go toward this essential repair. Once we pass tonight and don't pass this, if we don't pass this article tonight, we will be bumped out of line for that money, and it will go to somebody else who wants it.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Capital Planning Committee?
The Capital Planning Committee recommends approval of this article 5-1-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Sewer Commissioners?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Sewer Commission voted 4-1-0.
And Mr. Pitch, I'm going to recognize you on the Sewer Commission. I think you had asked to make a statement before
Yes.
we open the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I want to thank everybody who has come in here this evening. I know it's exclusively for the Sewer Commission, but it is an extremely important decision we have to make. And we are in, it is as the chairman of the Finance Committee said, we are in a time slot that gives us an opportunity to have some subsidies, at least 10% perhaps, for reimbursement in this project. If we miss this opportunity, we have to go back in line when they start it up again next year, and we have no reason to believe that we will have any better opportunity at that time. It is important, though, that the system maintain its operation. We are at a point where all the mechanicals are at a 20 to 25-year lifespan, and they're beginning to have difficulties in maintaining them on a consistent basis. Now, I'd like to introduce our consultants from GHD, Mark Drainville and Sarah Greenberg, and they're going to do a technical presentation.
Yes, I would allow them the courtesy of the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Granville.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Capital Committee, Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the Sewer Commissioners. I'm going to give a brief presentation to hopefully address comments that have come up through various presentations that have been given over the past couple of months. Next slide, please. So most of the existing water pollution control facility in town has exceeded its life expectancy. Although there are many needs that have been identified, there are two that have risen to the top as far as urgency. The Headworks facility and the clarifiers. The Headworks facility has failed equipment and support systems. It's the first process at the treatment facility. Anything that gets thrown down the drain has to be screened out at the beginning of this facility. It really receives a lot of abuse. It's currently at its life expectancy of 20 years. The clarifiers are critical for meeting the permit, and most of that equipment is at 40 years or double its life expectancy. Next slide, please. I have a couple of slides just to show. This is the Headworks facility. It's in a very corrosive environment, rusted, and really in need of repair, not functioning anymore the way that it should due to its life expectancy being exceeded. Next slide. What happens when that equipment doesn't function any longer? You can see a person at the bottom of a tank having to manually clean the tank for sand that makes its way down to the tanks, and on the right-hand side, rags that make their way into the process and clog equipment and lead to excessive maintenance. Next slide. The clarifiers are beyond their useful life at this point. The tanks do not meet current design standards. And next slide, you can see the failed nature on the right-hand side of the tanks in town, and the left-hand side is a properly functioning one. Next slide. So there have been several reports that have documented the issues over the years. In 2015, a capital improvement plan was developed. This was 8 years ago, indicating 2 of the 3 clarifiers were well beyond their useful life. In 2021, an evaluation of the WPCF indicated 2 critical upgrades, the Headworks and the clarifier upgrades. Within 2 years, all the equipment that is the subject of this project will be beyond its useful life, and the project is expected to take as long as 4 years to complete. Next slide. The current planned upgrades include replacement of equipment that has exceeded its life expectancy, but it will also accommodate future needs of the town. Existing buildings will be reused, tanks will be reused as much as possible. The anticipated costs are up to $36 million. Are there future costs on the way for this facility? The answer is yes. The sewer department is completing a comprehensive wastewater management plan. The draft is anticipated by the end of this year. This plan will outline additional upgrades needed due to life expectancy being exceeded for other portions of the facility, as well as future growth needs of the town and environmental needs. Next, thanks. So why is the sewer department seeking funding now? The state funding program, the SRF program, has more funding available now than it has in the past through the Federal Infrastructure Act, which was passed last year. I don't expect everybody to be able to read. On the right-hand side is the funding list, and this just shows the town is slotted down at number 58 out of 60 projects that were funded. There were a total of 89 projects that were submitted for funding this year, and only 60 received funding. In the past, I'd say 5+ years ago, all projects that were submitted for funding received funding. There's just a lot more needs in the state right now. We had to submit, as part of this request, the 2021 evaluation report, and that's why the town is receiving this funding. Next slide. How will this be paid? The town will receive 10% principal forgiveness, which is essentially a grant. We'll also receive 0 to 2% interest on the loan, and potential for more funding through the infrastructure bill. This infrastructure bill is only active for 5 years. It was enacted last year, and we're in year number 2 at this point. How will it be paid? 10% reduction in the price from principal forgiveness, 17% will be paid through the intermunicipal agreement with Bourne. It will be funded through the sewer budget, and the balance of up to $27 million for this project will cost between $80 to $100 per year per user. Next slide. So with the funding opportunity comes a schedule. This project was submitted for funding in mid-August of last year. The design funds for the project were approved at fall town meeting last year. The next milestone is a borrowing authorization, which the sewer department is seeking tonight. And if this passes, then there are additional scheduled deadlines that will need to be met in order to stay within the funding program. If it's not approved, then the town would drop off of the funding list. Next slide. Last slide is this sewer department just requesting authorization to borrow funds for the SRF loan at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 1? Mr. Slavin.
I'm going to ask the audience indulgence. I had surgery last week, so I'm going to sit down while I speak because I don't think you want to see me fall down. As most of you know, I voted no on this. I'm going to read off a few statements so people understand where I'm coming from. We continue to not learn from our prior mistakes. We have not fixed the EDU rate. It's 13 years now since we were supposed to have done that. The revised comprehensive wastewater management plan, it's 12 years since that's been done. And we knew we had to do it. We have not submitted a final plan to increase output from the plant for 12 years now. Even if we upgrade and do things, we are still limited to 1.5 million gallons a day output. Doesn't matter what we do to the plant, that's our max by the state. We continue to use the Band-Aid approach and fix when failure is imminent. It's not the way to do business. We have no long-term business plan. We continue to allow consultants to just prolong their employment with no real fixes. We allow consultants, engineers to bury sewer lines in water, which obviously will fail somewhere down the line. We have sewer lines at Onset and Swiss Beach that can fail at any time. It's time we take a step back and put together a complete plan to implement this plan. There's no guarantee on the terms of the loan, even though we've heard that with no problem getting the loan. There are conditions that have to be met, so everybody needs to understand that. Bourne, which is our neighbor, which has an agreement with us, has never been told about this project for $36 million. They have not voted on it. They know nothing about it. I don't know if Peter Meyer, selectman from the town of Bourne, is here or not, but I had a conversation with him today to confirm what I'm saying. So even though they told us that Bourne is going to pay 17.1%, they haven't voted on it. They haven't made any provisions for it, etc. We're still waiting for submissions for increased capacity, as I mentioned.
30 seconds, Mr. Slavin.
I'd ask for an extra minute if it's okay.
That's fine.
We're still waiting for submissions for increased capacity, modification of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. We have new regulations coming from the state, which are the TMDLs, which will affect the town of Wareham because we're right on the Buzzards Bay west coast side. Already has happened on the east coast side of Buzzards Bay, which will increase our responsibilities. And I'll be very honest with everybody here. I have no idea how we're going to pay for what's coming down the line that we will be responsible for, even though it's not our output. Let's stop the constant mistakes and put together a plan within the next 12 months and come back with something that we know what we're going to have to spend and make it work. This doesn't work here. There's an old saying from the old Fram commercials for those who remember, pay me now or pay me later. We cannot afford to pay us later. Thank you.
Yes, lady at the microphone.
Barbara Smith, Onset. Alan just referred to one of my questions, which was, where did we come to that 17.9%? And apparently we haven't, according to Alan, haven't talked to Bourne about that. So that's kind of interesting. That was an arbitrary 17.9%, or no?
It's not arbitrary. It's in our contract. But again, you have a municipality that has not voted, has not provided funding or anything as of today.
How did we get that 17.9? Who voted on it?
Well, no. We're not going to have this back and forth exchange.
Okay.
If you have a point that you would like to make, we'd be happy to hear it.
Yeah, okay, well, I have another question. If these problems were noted in 2015, why are we looking at it in 2023?
Okay. If there's anyone on the sewer commission that might want to answer that question.
Yes, Madam Moderator. May I point out that the commission that you're referring to was not formed until 2015, and give them a couple of years to get their feet on the ground to find out what's going on. Then the consultants and the like, because of course, will explore the possibility of the experts for advice and the like. And there's a matter of the money as we went down the road as to how much we have available and how to cost it. It's a difficult process and a very complex process. And like yourself, you could be volunteer to be a sewer commissioner also. It's a complex process for all of us to learn. We do the best we can, and hopefully we do the best for the community. And as far as the reference to the contract, I have a copy of the contract. It's a 20-year contract signed by 5 selectmen, and it has very specific in section 5.5 that when you do a maintenance or upgrade to the system, they will reimburse us for 17.9%. As to not having consulted with them as yet, we don't have the approval. I was waiting for yours.
30 seconds.
And I have reached out to make an appointment with the Bourne County Commission, the Bourne Commissioners, to meet with them and to explain the process.
Okay, third question is, are we still issuing building permits with all of these problems with our sewer?
We have a moratorium on you can build if you like, but you can't connect with the sewer.
So all these buildings, apartments that are being built are not having sewer?
The ones that you're seeing under construction were permitted prior to the moratorium going in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lady right behind you, please.
Donna Fox Rubin, Highland Shores Drive in Wareham. We're a waterfront community. We're surrounded by water. It really frightens me that we can be this far down the road in a waterfront community with a sewer problem. I agree with Alan that I think the time for band-aiding the issue is done. But the concern I have with what Alan says is if we're 12 months away from having a more holistic, permanent solution to this problem, my question is, do we have 12 months before we have a critical failure? And then the issue becomes, now we have a liability for the pollution we cause into the water that surrounds us. And I'm not an expert on this subject, but what little I do know about it, I can virtually guarantee the cleanup will cost far more than any remedy we come up with. So I think we need to act more quickly on a solution, but it needs to be a fix, not a Band-Aid. And I think we need to do a better job. If we knew when we installed this system that it had a 20-year life expectancy, why weren't we talking about this in year 15? We knew it had a finite amount of time.
30 seconds.
So all I'm asking is, let's not throw good money away after bad, but we really need to race up the timetable because the exposure for us is huge. I don't know if our insurance policy has pollution coverage. Probably not. And even if we do, I promise you it's a finite amount. So I think you need to look at the bigger potential problem here and race to a solution, but a good one.
Yes, lady behind you, lady at the microphone.
Thank you, Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. I think we need to do this. Unfortunately, as Mr. Slavin said, it's been years in the making. I think that, or I would appreciate if the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Town Administrator took a deep dive and reconsidered the retained earnings that you take from the sewer department every year to fund the town, part of the town budget. if that had been done, because they take anywhere between $500,000 and $850,000. Excuse me?
What's your point? Yes.
The current topic she's discussing is not the topic we're on right now.
It most certainly is. It's about how we're paying for this.
The retained earnings don't have to do with the article in place.
Okay, then I won't use the word retained earnings. But
I think I don't want to have this argument back and forth. Your point is well taken, but I think it is in the scope of what
Thank
the
you.
article.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think that if the town, we have been taking between $500,000 and $850,000 a year out of the sewer department to supplement the town's budget by paying 15% of salaries. Now, I will tell you right now, if we privatize the sewer department, which has been discussed, those positions would not take a 15% cut in their pay.
30 seconds, Mrs. Ekstrom.
Thank you. So I would strongly encourage the Finance Committee to start looking at these things. You're supposed to be our eyes and ears, not their advocates. And one more thing, Alan, you're right. Pay me now or pay me later. The thing is, with Bourne, their EDU rate or whatever is about $400 more a year than ours is.
Time, Mrs. Ekstrom. Thank you.
Could I have 10 more seconds to finish that?
10 seconds.
So they may not have discussed it, but they have plenty of money, or they're gouging their people too.
Yes, lady at the microphone, please.
Hi, Linda Hannon, Precinct 3. Process question. If we voted to go ahead and do this $36 million so we could get access to the 3.6 from the government, if we, to Alan's point, came up with a more holistic plan over the next 12 months, according to this, it says that the plan isn't actually going to start until June of next year, which is 11 months. If we decided to go ahead and vote for this 36, we got the 3.6 million, and then sometime, say March, April, realize that we need to realign the money a little better, is that something that we can do?
Is there anyone that wishes to answer that question?
Could you repeat the question, please?
So I'm thinking if that, I think part of the goal here, we definitely need to deal with the situation. But what you guys are saying is that we're running out of time to get access to the additional $3.6 million of federal funding. So if we voted to go ahead and say, let's do this, let's go through the process of asking for that grant money, but there's an 11-month process before the project actually starts. So that gives us 11 months to come up with a better, holistic, how is this going to fit into the whole thing? So would we be able to, if we needed to, say to the government, hey, we're going to put this on hold for another year while we figure it out a little bit better? I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way that we can not lose access to that $3.6 million?
Right. 30 seconds.
Madam Moderator, if I may defer to our consultant, Mark, he may be more familiar with the details of that grant and the qualifications for it.
Yes, Mr. Dranville?
So I guess my answer to that is that the town could decide to not proceed later. It may not look good to the funding agency, but you could decide to not do it. You could decide to not do it. So,
Thank you.
One last question is, no matter, agreed we have to come up with a better plan. I definitely think that I support that needs to happen.
Your time is actually up, but go ahead and ask your question, and I'll see if there's anyone that can answer it for you.
Is this stuff going to have to get done no matter what? Bigger plan or smaller plan? Or if they come up with another plan, would they say, no, we don't need these clarifiers and stuff?
If I may,
Mr.
Madam
Pigeon.
Moderator, if we don't do this, we're going to be continually dealing with mechanicals that are deteriorating day by day. It's almost of necessity. Now, do we have a plan B? There is no redundancy in this system whatsoever. And we're going to have to deal on a day-to-day basis. a piece of equipment that's 20 to 25 years old, already causing problems downstream. As an example, if I may, moderator, continue, the headworks, they take most of the bulk out of the stream besides rags and the like. They take certain particulates of a certain size, and then it goes down to the clarifiers, where again it goes through another filtration system and sedimentation. And if one doesn't do the job that it's required to do, the next system can't function properly, as well as what goes on beyond the clarifiers.
I just think my question was, no matter what plan we come up with, and we come up with a bigger plan, are we going to need clarifiers in headworks?
No, please, Mark. If you don't mind, Madam Moderator, I defer some to the technical issues.
Yes, Mr. Granville.
The proposed components of this, this article are all items that are included in the upcoming plan. So they're all items that would be continued to be built upon in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Peter Titlebaum, Precinct 3. I had initially handed you a motion to amend that related to the actual article. I didn't have an opportunity to see the motion, which is much more comprehensive and, of course, recites the general laws. But I would still like to offer an amendment that removes the language about the bonds or notes being general obligations of the town, because they should not be general obligations of the town. They should be secured by the local system revenues as defined in section 1 rather of chapter 29C. So with that in mind, what I propose, and again, I'm just kind of doing this on the fly, if you start in the 6th line, after the semicolon, that such bonds or notes shall be, get rid of general obligations of the town unless the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, determines that they should be issued as limited obligations, and have it read that such bonds or notes shall be limited obligations and shall be secured by local system revenues as defined, and then the rest of the language. This makes sure that it's the sewer users, like me, end up paying for this. There's been some talk in this town going back decades that somehow everybody in town benefits from having a sewer system. That if you're on septic, you should be paying for the sewer plant because it benefits you. We've got people paying 50 grand to put in these nitrogen removing septic systems. State law sets things up so that we have 2 different ways to deal with sewage in this state. You can have a septic system, or you can be hooked up to a sewer plant.
You have 30 seconds.
A sewer plant may be a slightly better way of treating things, but I don't ever want to see somebody who is not on the sewer having to pay a penny towards these costs. So that would be my amendment, Madam Moderator, and I would ask that we vote for it.
Mr. Titlebaum, if you could, you had handed up an earlier motion, but you've now changed that. Could you?
Want me to come up here and write?
Please.
You're going to have to put that out.
And there's a second on the motion.
No, but you need this, because I need your name, I need it.
Oh, okay.
What time was it? 7:30. Say, amendment to, as attached. Yeah, so you just basically want this cost from and instead of may, it's shall.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion to amend, and I'm going to, bear with me a moment, read what the motion to amend is with the language that Mr. Titlebaum is suggesting. So his motion would be, I move that the town appropriate $36 million for the purpose of financing the construction of the WPCF clarifier upgrade and headworks projects, including without limitation all costs thereof as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of the General Laws, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is authorized to borrow $36 million and issue bonds or notes therefore under Chapter 44 of the General Laws and/or Chapter 29C of the General Laws or any other lawful authority. That such bonds or notes shall be issued as limited obligations and shall be secured by local system revenues as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C. That the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is authorized to borrow all or a portion of such amount from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust established pursuant to Chapter 29C, and in connection therewith to enter into a financing agreement and/or security agreement with the trust, and otherwise to contract with the trust and the Department of Environmental Protection with respect to such loan and for any federal or state aid available for the project or for the financing thereof. That the Select Board or their designee is authorized to enter into a project regulatory agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection to expend all funds available for the project and to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out the project. And I thank you for your patience on that, but because it's a borrowing article, I just want to make sure that the motion to amend is actually stated in the record. Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Is there anything to be said on the amendment?
Madam Moderator, just a point of information, please. Could you ask, through you, to either our consultants, our attorney, or one of our other finance people, does this affect our qualifications for any of the grants that we may be eligible for under the original wording?
Is there anyone on the Finance Committee that might?
That question was, that was my question as well, and I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Town Council does.
That's what you came for, Rich.
Yes, Mr. Bowen.
Oh, thank you, Madam Moderator.
Oh, you're welcome.
Rich Bowen, Town Council. This is an extremely complicated question. In normal finance, having a borrowing that has a specific revenue source attached to it is generally referred to as a sinking fund. I think our treasurer can probably confirm what I am saying here, at least I hope so, John. Generally, sinking funds are disfavored under municipal law unless there is a specific legislative authorization to allow a sinking fund. In this particular case, I'm reluctant to say that there is such an authorization because the proposed borrowing is being done under a specific statute that itself does not appear to contemplate a sinking fund transaction. Now, does that mean that it's not possible to accomplish the intent of the party offering the amendment? It is possible to achieve that result, but through a different mechanism. This motion would attach a troublesome condition, not troublesome from a policy point of view, but troublesome from a whether bond counsel would approve it point of view. It would attach a condition that might trouble bond counsel and lead to a rejection of the overall borrowing. You could achieve the same result rather than by conditioning the borrowing option by doing an allocation at the annual town meeting when it comes to paying for the principal and interest that would accrue from the issuance of the bond. So respectfully, while I completely understand the intent of what's being offered here, I think in the absence of having a prior approval from bond counsel, which I don't believe would be forthcoming under the statute that we're using, the better approach to achieve the desired result would be at an allocating appropriation at the annual town meeting. Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said on the amendment? Yes, Mr. Camerano. You may need to get a microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to our attorney, Mr. Bowen. Could he, in layman's words, explain the difference between the motion and the amendment? I really don't understand, and it's a little tough for me to swallow. Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
If you wish to, thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Dom, thanks. It gives me a chance to take my lawyer hat off for a minute and talk the way I usually try to do in real life. The thing you got up here, it would be paid for by user fees. And that's the way it's set up. That's the way the bond would hit the street. What Peter's amendment would do would be to, well, Peter, what are we going to do? Attach it strictly to the users, or are we going to make it to the general base? Strictly to the users, correct? Okay. So what Peter was going to do was, rather than having it spread across both users and the tax base, Peter was going to have it dedicated strictly to the users. Now, in principle, that's not a strange idea. You know, in finance, you do that kind of thing all the time. You know, and generally speaking, finance is a good idea. I know I don't get to talk about stuff, whether it's good or bad ideas. All I'm saying is that generally it's not a foreign concept, but when you're dealing with municipal finance, you can only do things that are allowed by specific state laws, and specific state laws tell us what we can and can't do. And one thing that the state law has said is, hey, you can't do sinking funds unless there's a statute that specifically says you can do it. Now, without wishing to comment on whether the proposed amendment is a good or bad idea, I don't have the right to comment on that. But all I'm saying is that regardless of the merit of the idea, if you went to the street and tried to put this bond out with that condition on it, I think, number one, I think bond counsel would probably shoot you down the second it got out there. Bond counsel wouldn't sign off on it. That's number one. And then number two, even if you got it by bond counsel, you'd probably come into questions of whether the borrowing would be tax exempt for the people who actually bought the bonds. So, look, I understand the idea. You know, I know Peter is a real smart guy, good lawyer. I just think in this particular set of circumstances, you're playing with fire. Thank you. I hope that, Dom, I hope that.
On the amendment, Mrs. Ekstrom?
Yes, thank you. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. I urge the body to vote against the amendment for the reasons, or for some of the reasons that town council also, well, I don't want to tie you into me, so God forbid. For the reasons that town council said, but I also just wanted to make a point that our sewer plant is held to a standard of clean water. I think it's 5.6 parts per million for nitrogen, whereas septic systems are in the neighborhood of 15 parts per million. The number one pollutant of waterways around here is septic systems. So when people start saying, oh, people on septic should not have to pay, guess what? People on septics are at the beach too. They're fishing too. So if we decided on an enterprise fund, you know, there are 3 ways to do it. One is surplus, one is deficit, and one is level. We pay more than we need to because we pay other things out of it. But if the town ever did decide to do that, there's nothing wrong with it, and everyone in this town benefits. So that's all. So please vote it down.
Yes, gentleman at the microphone. Did you want to speak?
Okay. Hello, David Evans, Precinct 2. The original wording allows for the limited payment of this by the sewer system. So all we're gaining by the amendment is requiring it to be done that way. And if, as council says, it may not be feasible to do it in the limited way, being paid only by the sewer users. So, as was said, we could always vote on this in another town meeting to restrict it to the users, but that can be done under the original and very apparently legally acceptable version. I might also say that a town having a sewer system is better off overall, and limiting who pays for it is a bit like the old argument, well, if you don't have children, why should you pay for the school system? And generally we've all agreed that everyone is better because we have schools and everyone should pay for them. So I'm against the amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Howard Smith, Precinct 1. Oh, excuse me, Precinct 4. Okay. Been a long day. First of all, as some of you know, I ran Smith Cesspool Service for 46 years. So I kind of dealt with one end of this project, not this end. That was bad enough. But the idea, the concept that Peter is trying to, Mr. Teitelbaum is trying to put across is right. It's 100% correct. Because people on sewerage, you're using that facility almost 24 hours a day. Whereas if I went in and pumped your septic system, it's 1,000 gallons, I would have been paying $80 to dump that 1,000 gallons. You compare it to what people on sewerage are paying per gallon. I haven't figured it out yet, but it's only a fraction of a cent compared to what people on septic systems would be paying. So, and if I did do it, I have been told that once I went to the sewer plant and dumped it, it would be processed within 24 hours. So again, you're paying 10 cents a gallon for 24 hours of use. So if you only pump your septic system once a year or every 2 or 3 years, you're getting soaked. I was going to use another word, but I won't.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yes, sir, gentleman at the microphone.
Tom Mickey, Precinct 3. I spent a good part of my professional career doing research on septic systems, and the US EPA, contrary to a previous speaker, has published a number of manuals promoting the use of on-site sewage disposal systems. And they indicate that a properly designed, operated, and maintained system generates no more nitrogen to the water table than sanitary sewer. And in fact, septic systems are considered non-point sources of pollution, whereas the sewage treatment plant is considered a point source. In the case of a septic system, there's an opportunity for the soil, for grass, for trees, to remove some of the nitrogen from that wastewater. In the case of the sewage treatment plant, whatever they don't remove at the sewage treatment plant ends up as point source nitrogen discharged directly into the waterways. So when I hear people talk about how bad septic systems are in terms of pollution, we need to step back and recognize what the science says. And I support those previous speakers who say that I'd love to be on the sewer. I'll never be on the sewer. But I have a septic system that's properly designed, operated, and maintained, and I think it does a pretty good job of controlling nitrogen. And I wish the sewage treatment plant could treat the water as well as my septic system does. Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said on the amendment on Article 1?
Madam Moderator.
May I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Chadwick.
I'll
I
let
can
him go
wait.
first.
I don't mind waiting if you...
I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. You know what, I've been sitting in the back, I'm Dan Perdios. Good evening. I've been sitting in the back and I'm a little hard of hearing, you know, and so I just want a little clarification. Did I hear right that the select board voted 0, 4, and 1? Is that correct?
Yes, so the select board voted 0 for 1,
And so
i.e. they voted against this article.
That means they voted against it.
Correct.
That's correct. And we elect the select board, right? And the rest of the people who voted for this are not elected. Is that also correct?
No, sewer commissioners are...
Well, no, I assume you're making a rhetorical question. The sewer commissioners are in fact elected.
I'm new to the area and I'm just trying to understand. It really worries me that the select board, no one on the select board is supporting this project. And I'm flabbergasted and it's really a red flag for me. We've all been sitting back here hearing all the reasons why we have to approve this very night. And, well, the select board has also heard all this. And they're still opposing this project. So something doesn't jive.
30 seconds.
Something doesn't jive here. And I'm trying to decide how I'm going to vote. And the fact that they're opposing this project is a real red flag for me, and I don't think I can vote for this project as long as they're so up. No one on the select board has voted for this, and I can't vote for that. I don't understand how this happened. I just don't. I don't. I'm flabbergasted.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chadwick?
Jared Chadwick, Glen Charlie. To tell you why I voted no against it, the facility's failing. It's been past its time. We're talking to the amendment.
The amendment is actually what's on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Muniz.
All right, well, in that case, I move to vote.
Are you moving the previous question?
Sorry, move the question.
Okay, is there a second on that motion? Okay. And there's no discussion on motion to move the previous question. All those in favor of moving the previous question, in which case we'll go directly to a vote on the proposed amendment, please signify by stating aye. Any opposed, please state nay. The motion to move the previous question has passed. So we're going to go to a vote on Mr. Teitelbaum's motion to amend Article 1. Just bear with me a moment. So I just wanted to get some clarification. So in terms of the amendment, it calls for a majority vote. All those in favor of Mr. Teitelbaum's motion to amend, please signify by stating aye. Any opposed, please signify by stating nay. Nay. I declare that the motion to amend has failed. So we now move to the main motion without that amendment. Is there anything further to be said on Article 1 on the main motion? And I think if I'm recalling correctly, I think the speaker at the microphone has already spoken on the main motion, so I'm going to ask if you could just defer to Mr. Muniz, who has not spoken on the article. It's not a different question. We had discussed the main article at length before Mr. Titlebaum spoke to amend. So, Mr. Moniz, you have the floor.
Jim Manise, Cranberry Highway. I heard reference to lacking redundancy. I believe we have 3 clarifiers, and I don't think 3 clarifiers will go down at one time. I'd like some, speaking of that, clarification on whether it would be reusing the Headworks building or putting up a new building, and what the difference in the costs would be on that. Those are things to consider. I'm not against improving and spending the funds, but I like to see it done in a way which we know this is our best option. And also I believe you can pull in portable headworks, so if we had a failure there, they can bring in something from the outside and set it up to go. If someone would clarify that through you, Madam Moderator, whether that can be done. Maybe
Madam Moderator, may I ask that you allow Mark, our consultant, to answer that question, please?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, so one of the questions was, are we building a new Headworks building or reusing the existing? We are reusing the existing building in its entirety. We're just upgrading the building itself. As far as being able to bring in a portable or temporary Headworks facility, we actually did explore that. It can take 6 to 9 months for a temporary facility to be produced, because these are all made to order. All these facilities are made to order. The clarifiers question there was, as far as redundancy, there are multiple units, but there are no units that are constructed to be waiting in the event of a failure. So they're all the 3 that are there are all needed to be in operation. So there's no standby unit, if you will. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we shut down one of them when we repaired them. I don't believe we shut all 3 of them down. I could be incorrect there. I'm glad to hear it be reusing the building. And I have some concern that, as we were discussing the previous amendment, that the entire town votes.
Your time is up, Mr. Moniz.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you can wrap up, go ahead.
Okay. The entire town votes on whether to approve the borrowing, but only 50% of the town are responsible for paying it. I have some concern about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, lady approaching the microphone.
Thank you, Jillian Morton, Great Neck Road. My question is to, on our sheet here, it says the select board actually recommended favorable action. So I'm curious if that's some sort of typo?
No, it's sort of an anomaly of the way the report gets done. So it'll say favorable action, but if you see any negative vote on it, it's to vote to not
so it's
pass the
majority,
article.
okay.
It's just the way that it gets set up.
So I would say I would like to hear from the select board members who did vote to have this approved.
So if there's anyone on the select board that voted to have it approved?
Yeah, you said the vote's 2-3-0, correct?
No.
So I think Mr. Slavin probably voted against having it approved.
We changed our vote.
Is there anyone on the select board that voted in favor of the article that would care to speak?
May I
Madam
clarify?
Moderator,
May I just clarify?
just a correction for what's going on.
Yeah.
We met at 6 o'clock tonight. We revisited the article, and we revoted 0-4-1. It has to be favorable action, so all the motions for the Finance Committee and other committees are the same. So the actual vote by the Board of Selectmen as of tonight was 0-4-1. So if you want anyone to speak on it, it's basically we voted no.
Sure, I'd love to hear from the other members,
Well,
if they're willing to speak.
You already heard from me, so I'm done.
Yeah.
Hope you had a nice wedding.
Well, Go ahead, Mr. Bessie, you have not spoken yet.
Keep it short. I don't know if we have enough time. Madam Moderator, thank you. Ronald Bessie, Precinct 1. I will speak to just a couple of the reasons why I don't support this article. One of the biggest ones is options. All we've heard about is one singular option. I think as a consulting firm, engineering firm, whatever you are, you should be thinking about multiple options to give us the option to choose what we would want to spend our money on. All they're asking for right now is $36 million to fix one or two issues, but in the meeting that we had with the consultants when they proposed this to us, there were a lot of questions that were asked about, well, what is it going to cost us down the road? And there was no denial that there's going to be a lot of money that's going to cost us down the road, but they had no answers. There was not one answer to any of the questions that we proposed about future work. So today, it's 36 million. Tomorrow, it could be 80 million. There was a facility down in Orleans that was just completed at the beginning of this year that produces 350,000 gallons a day, which is only a third of what we currently process every single day. And the cost of that facility was almost $200 million. So there's a huge discrepancy. And we're talking about just fixing two things. So now, when you fix something, you make it stronger, the weak points become weaker. And then now we're going to be spending more money and more money and more money. So I want to know, what is it going to cost us in totality? Don't tell me about the fix today and what it costs, because I don't care about the cost today. I care about the long-term cost. So yeah, it's $100 a year right now. Next year, they could ask for another $50 million, and now it's another $200 a year. Now you're at $300, and then $500. Where does it stop? I want to know where it's going to stop. They cannot answer that question. We are kicking the can down the street. We're not picking up the trash. I want to know when we're going to pick up the trash and when we're going to be clean. And I'm sorry, this article does not answer that question.
30 seconds, Mr. Bessie.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So this article does not answer that question. I want to know what it's going to cost me completely, whether I'm a sewer user or a non-sewer user or whoever has to pay for this. The $3.6 million, that's chump change compared to what it might cost us down the road. I'd rather pay the extra $3.6 million.
Mr. Bessie, your time is up.
Than save it now.
Thank you. So, lady at the microphone, I'm going to allow you to complete your comments, and then we'll go to the next speaker.
So to go to one of the previous speakers of the fact that FinCom has approved this unanimously and the Sewer Commission as well, but that our elected officials, these are the people that we voted to be in office. And with representation, this being a special meeting, there's not a lot of the town isn't here, but these are our representatives, and they're all saying no. I would implore everyone here to listen to them. And to think about, these are the people, they're looking at the broader 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So I appreciate that, and that the selectmen have thought of that and not just a easy fix right now. Thank you.
So I just want to make one point of clarification, which might have gotten lost in earlier discussion. The sewer commissioners are actually elected officials as well. Mr. Teitelbaum.
Thank you again, Madam Moderator. I do have a question, either for the commissioners or for the consultant, whoever's best situated to answer it. And that is, does this expenditure, if it's carried out and you build what you say you're going to build, does it add at all to the capacity, or does it allow for the increased capacity if other parts of the plant are expanded without having to go back and do more of this work?
Is there anyone that wishes to speak to that question?
To be blunt, no, it does not expand the capacity. What it does, though, however, is to allow it to operate more efficiently. As we currently have, we have 4 lagoons down there. We're 2 lagoons. They're over several 100,000 gallons of untreated sewage. Another 2 are stored in treated sewage that is in process, and that's the only way the plant expands. We process 1.5 million gallons a day. We are limited to 2 million gallons a day, because that's what the plant was constructed for. In between, we are limited because we are restricted by DEP to average at certain 1.5, and we are limited also by the amount we can dump into the river. We cannot expand that plant as it currently exists. We are serving 60% of the town as in the current configuration.
Well, thank you. I certainly understand that you're restricted by the discharge permit. But let me ask this then. If the plant was designed for 2 million and you're permitted on average for 1.5 million a day,
30 seconds.
Could this system handle 2 million?
If anyone wishes to answer the question?
Mark, can you answer that?
Yes, sir.
So the 1.5 million is an average over time. The 2 million is a shorter duration. So just want to make that clarification. So, and yeah, these upgrades in and of themselves would not afford more capacity. They would be building towards a future where you would, but in and of themselves, they would not.
Okay, thank you. Just briefly.
Your time is actually up. If you would like to sum up briefly.
Just briefly, I'm going to follow Selectman Slavin's recommendations here and vote against this, and ask the sewer commissioners to come back with a comprehensive capital plan that extends out maybe 10 years, talks about how we increase capacity, talks about how we increase discharge, and all these other things that have not been dealt with. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Maxwell Holbrook, Precinct 5, licensed wastewater operator and licensed collections operator. I currently work at another plant, and we just approved a $36 million plan to overhaul our entire plant. So what I would like to know is where this $36 million is breaking down to, because we are adding an entirely new SBR basin, overhauling an entire ops building, and adding an entire garage. Can anyone answer that?
Is there anyone to answer the question?
It's a question that's unanswerable. We have done numerous studies for our facility. How someone else is functioning, I couldn't answer that. And with all due respect, I think that's a kind of an unfair question, because there's a number of stipulations that whatever municipality you're referring to has that we perhaps don't have, or there are other alternatives that we've explored they have not. So I think it's an unfair comparison.
Understand.
With all due respect.
Thank you. Gentleman at the microphone.
Ed Ransom,
Before the gentleman
Ward
sits
2.
down, can you forward us the engineer consultant that you're using?
And if anybody has any questions about sewer treatment plants, I would suggest you take a ride to Lawrence and look at their plant, state of the art. When they discharge water, it's clean enough you can drink it. They call it spring water, okay? But I mean, just go up there and look at it. It's amazing.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything further to be said on Article 1?
Hello, Dave Evans again. I can remember years ago, Boston Harbor cleanup sat around undone for years, probably decades. And then finally, it was going to have to be done after all the money for it from the federal government was gone. So sometimes you kind of have to start and when you have the chance to have some money.
Thank you. Gentleman behind you at the microphone.
Sure. Tom Hannon, Precinct 3. I just find myself in an odd position because I have to agree with Barbara Ekstrom. I was on the FinCom, and the plant does need serious work, but I left it because I felt like we were just being an advocate for what certain other people wanted. And I'd love to just hear from the other select men, women, that why you voted no. If it's 041, I'd like to hear. We've heard from Ron, which was amazing, thank you, and Alan, awesome. I'd like to hear from the other three.
If they wish to speak, they're not required to. Mr. Chadwick is standing. Ms. Yurts, did you want to speak? I know you were standing before, and you have not spoken yet, so I'm going to allow you the floor.
Good evening. Is this working? Yeah. So I first voted for this, and then I'm the one that abstained. And the the flip-flop back and forth has to do with, we are in a situation right now where if this breaks, we are up Schitt's Creek. Really. And when we met with the consultants, our first question was, this is a fix for one portion of this. What's the whole plan look like? I mean, that's a common sense question. And we said, we want to see that back. However, we're also dealing with a situation where these things are in bad enough shape that they could break at any point in time. So do we apply a Band-Aid, understanding that this is holding here just till we get to the operating table, not this is the solution? And I still question, I still abstain, because what happens if we're not lucky enough for this to hold while we do all this other planning? But on top of it, that additional planning and the whole plan should be put together. We hear by the end of the year. I think it should be put together in 2 to 3 months, period. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chadwick, very briefly.
Short and simple, it's time for a new plant. I don't know how we're going to fund it. We have to figure it out, but it's time. The whole place has been going downhill for a while. I understand it. Everything's rusted, corroded. It's time for a new plant. We need to start looking at it. I'd rather take that $36 million and put it towards a new plant instead of wasting on something that's already outdated.
Yes, Ms. Whiteside.
The reason I voted against this was because I don't think we have all of the information that we require in order to make an informed decision. When we met with the consultants, we repeatedly asked them, what is the next step and what is the total cost? They could not answer the question, nor were they familiar with the plant in Orleans. They were asked directly if they knew about that plant, and they said, no, we're not aware of it. I cannot recommend something when I don't know what the total cost is, and the total cost is not $36 million.
Madam Moderator.
No, you're out of order. Mr. Hannon, if you have anything further that you would like to say,
no,
then I'm going to recognize Mr. Camerano, and then I will entertain the motion to move the question. Mr. Hannon, go ahead.
No.
If you have anything further to say. Thank you. Mr. Camerano.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was the one who voted against it on the Finance Committee, and for the same reasons that all the selectmen said the same thing. Madam Moderator, I'm not sure if I can ask this, but through you, could I get a raise of hands of sewer users versus non-sewer users? Is that something I can ask for?
If they wish to, they can. But they're not.
Would all the sewer users raise their hand? So it's about half, maybe a little less. The reason why I asked that question is it's been brought up that the non-sewer users won't be paying for this, yet the town is allowing them to vote to spend the sewer users' money. I just don't think that's right. Thank you.
Madam
All right,
Moderator.
so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to recognize Mr. Pigeon because he is on the sewer commissioners. I will recognize the chair of the Finance Committee, and then whoever made the motion to move the question.
I was going to get up to move the
recognize him
question.
up at okay. It was you, all right?
It wasn't me, but I was going to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Go ahead, Mr. Pigeon.
Madam Moderator, I'm the chairman of the Sewer Commission. I'd like to add that there are 4 committees that voted on this. 3 voted approval. That's 18 people against the 4 who are sitting here before you. We worked very diligently. We had several reports, several reviews. We analyzed the fact that the plant is not going anywhere and it's not getting any better. We are committed to deliver a service to the people of this community, at least 60% of us. Please, you can ask what happens after this. We don't know. We've only got 1 plant. There's no redundancy. There's no backup. If these systems begin failing, the system itself begins failing. What happens beyond this is the rest of the plant that is also 25 years old, equally as in need of replacement. I have to ask, what do we do if we don't replace these units? You want a larger plan? We have them. I have a stack of papers like that of various plans. What to do in the future. They're all available online. I welcome them to read them. Please, consider what is happening here and what the future is of that plant, or what future it may or may not have, because it's your decision. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Goggins.
I think we are conflating some separate issues that really should be kept separate. The issue before us tonight is, do we spend the money that has been carefully studied and planned for well over a year on an immediate repair that we knew we were going to need because the equipment is at the end of its useful life? Are we going to do that and keep the plant from failing? The second issue, which is a very important issue, I absolutely agree, I think the entire Finance Committee agrees, is what do we do for the longer-term solution for the sewer needs of this town? It is a monumental task. We have started the process through the leadership of the Sewer Commission, through our consultants, through the leadership of the Select Board, to look into what needs to be done. But a major expansion of this plant or a new plant would take years to complete. We do not have years before the system fails. And I do not want to preside over Wareham's Provincetown failure of its sewer system. I think this is extremely important. The Finance Committee has considered this over and over again, starting all the way back in October when we had our first presentation. Nothing about this has changed. Everything that is being proposed now was proposed back then. This is a continuation of a process, a very thoughtful and careful process, and I believe that we need to approve this expenditure.
Thank you. And so now I will entertain Mr. Slavin had made a motion to move the question. Is there a second on the motion to move the question? Motion made and seconded to move the question. It's not debatable. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye. All those opposed signify by stating nay. The motion is passed unanimously. So we're going to go to a vote on Article 1. As has been discussed at length, it's a borrowing article. So it requires a 2/3 majority vote in order for it to pass. All those in favor of Article 1 as appears on the motion that's up here on the screen, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by stating nay. Nay. The chair is in doubt. I will call for a hand count. Don't put your cards up yet. So the tellers are in place. All those in favor of Article 1 as appears on the motion that's up here on the screen, please signify by raising your yellow voting card. Raise your hands high so the tellers can count them. Tellers all set? Okay. Section 1, Mr. Smith? 20. Section 2, Christine? 14. Section 3 here in front on the left. 4. Section 4 on the rear on the left. 10. All those opposed to the motion under Article 1, please signify by raising your voting card. Tellers all set? Section 1, Mr. Smith? 11. Section 2, Christine Smith? 12. Section 3 here in the front? 2. And Section 4 in the back? 5. So, people voting in favor, 48. People voting opposed, 30, for a total of 78. And the, which does not reach the required 2/3 majority vote for a borrowing. So the motion has failed. There being no other business before the town meeting, I will entertain a motion to dissolve the special town meeting. So moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye. 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 Any opposed? You can stay.